I'd be hard pressed to think that I've even heard that once, maybe, once or twice in these calls.
It's like for the first time this year, AI is on the back burner of any of this
AI
news
who?
cycle.
What? No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Welcome to Ankler Agenda. It's Wednesday, December 10th. I'm your host, Elaine Low, staff writer at The Ankler and author of the weekly series business newsletter. I'm here with Sean McNulty of The Wake Up in New York, New Jersey. Where are you, Sean?
I'm in my apartment by now? Come on, Elaine. We've been doing this how long together?
Which blurred backdrop am I looking at?
Just like blurred kitchen. That's New York. If it's blurred shades, that's generally New Jersey. So that's the decoding.
That in mind for next time. Thanks, Sean. And here with Natalie Jarvey of Like and Subscribe in LA.
Hello.
So much can change in a week, you guys. Last Wednesday, we were but sweet summer children, just waiting to see who had won the bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. And now, this week, we are in the trenches of an all-out battle for that iconic water tower and a few other assets, as Netflix has emerged the surprise winner with a deal worth $83 billion for Warner Brothers studio and streaming assets. And Paramount has launched a hostile bid for the whole thing, that and the cable networks, backed by presidential son-in-law Jared Kushner. Lots to talk about there first, but first we have our own prestige junkie, Katey Rich, on to walk us through the Golden Globe nominations and what they all mean. So welcome aboard, Katey.
Hi, guys. I wish I could tell you how all this merger business is going to turn out, but I turn to you for that. I will look forward to you telling me what to expect, and I'll focus on my sphere in the meantime.
What's your broad takeaway of the Globes?
I mean, the wicked snub is the one that was kind of heard around the world. I feel like I've seen more, the Golden Globes are always this interesting thing where people who don't necessarily pay attention to the awards have heard of the Golden Globes and therefore pay a lot of attention to them, even if the people voting on these are no more qualified than, say, Critics' Choice Awards, which announced their awards, their nominees last week. I voted in that one, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. But the Globes are an interesting way to just kind of take the temperature of where everyone thinks everything stands, whether or not that's how it turns out Oscar-wise. And I do think that Wicked for Good not making it into Best Comedy or Musical, combined with some of the box office woes that I actually learned about from reading Sean's newsletter, kind of makes it feel like this sequel is not going to have what it takes to go further than the first Wicked, especially since the Oscars, I think, are even less populist, even more inclined to kind of turn up their nose at a sequel. Avatar: Fire and Ash, it's worth noting, also didn't do super great with the Golden Globes. So even though we'll have some big movies in there, like Sinners, One Battle After Another, K-pop Demon Hunters, some of these big December sequels might not be as strong of awards contenders as the studios might have hoped.
Natalie, Sean, any big surprises that you guys clocked?
Well, I mean, there are some films here in the Best Motion Picture musical or comedy category that I will admit I didn't know existed.
Ooh,
so,
which ones?
Which ones?
Let's see. Well, I mean, No Other Choice and Nouvelle Vague are two that I wasn't really paying attention to. So it makes that Wicked snub even bigger in my mind, that
right,
it's
Katey?
this really huge tentpole title that's being overlooked in favor of these much smaller films.
Yeah, Nouvelle Vague in particular was an exciting one, because the thing I'm always rooting for in all these smaller awards leading up to the Oscars is spread the wealth. Don't just let Benicio del Toro win every single supporting actor award for One Battle After Another, as great as he is in that movie. So seeing Nouvelle Vague, which is a Netflix release, but it's also a very small film. It's one of two Richard Linklater movies in that category. He has Blue Moon as well, which is pretty impressive. I didn't see it coming. Netflix's only two Golden Globe picture nominees being Frankenstein and Nouvelle Vague is just a wild twist, but bring it on. The more that we can kind of throw some wrenches into this thing, the better, I think.
How's Marty Supreme? Any tea leaves there? Still isn't coming out on Christmas, of course. Anything strike your fancy there?
So the thing you always have to keep in mind is that Oscar voters, a lot of them haven't even started watching a lot of these movies. They'll do that over the holiday break. They have this great screener app where they have all of them on their television. Lucky them. And Marty Supreme is not opening until Christmas Day. Same goes for No Other Choice. And let's see, I think The Secret Agent is just now starting to open. A lot of these movies are breaking late. And then also Song Sung Blue, which got a nomination for Kate Hudson for actress. These are going to break around Christmas. So there's kind of a momentum building that's still happening for Marty Supreme and I think a few others. That movie did about as well with the Globes as I thought it would have done. It's hard to kind of overperform when you kind of have a sense of what the field is, when you get something showing up like, say, Elle Fanning getting in for Best Supporting Actress for Sentimental Value, in addition to her co-star, Inga Ibsdottir Lilius. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. Yeah, thank you, Sean. I appreciate the vote of confidence. That's a little bit of overperforming, but mostly what everyone hopes for is like show up, get mentioned where you're expected to get mentioned, and live to fight another day.
Now, the folks who watch and listen to Ankler Agenda are very focused on the TV business. And when you look at the nominations for drama series, we've got three, half of the crowd is Apple TV Plus contenders, Pluribus, Severance, and Slow Horses, a show which my children constantly make fun of. Not that they have seen it, but because they see it on the homepage of our TV and they're like, Slow Horses. Is that Gary Oldman just riding a horse slowly? And I was like, so has this deterred anybody else from watching this show or just my children?
Do your children know who Gary Oldman is?
I was going to say, wow, that's pretty
He's
good.
Sirius Black in Harry Potter.
Sure.
That's how they know.
Okay, there you go.
I'll be honest that it deterred me from watching Slow Horses for the first couple of seasons, and then finally there was enough word of mouth about it that I started to check it out, and now it's the show I look forward to most when it comes out every year. So do you think you have to get past the kind of confusing name to understand how great it is? And clearly Golden Globes voters have done that.
Yeah. Slow Horses and Severance were both pretty big players with the Emmys a couple months ago, so I would have expected them both to show up here. It is really great for Pluribus, which is such a new show. It's still airing. The Globes and then the SAG Awards, those nominations are coming in a few weeks, also have kind of this mid-season thing where they catch some of the most recent Emmy shows and then also some of the shows that will be on next year's Emmys. So Pluribus of the new shows really did fare the best. I think it's the only new show that made it into either of these top categories, but that doesn't include limited series, which has, newer stuff. It has more turnover by its nature. And Ray Seahorn got in for Best Actress, which again is a really good sign for an Apple show that it does feel like even by the standards of Apple is always a little bit smaller. It seems like it's breaking out to some extent.
I can't believe we've gotten this far in the conversation, Katey, without you bringing up the Best Podcast Award.
The most important award.
Most important category of them all, Katey.
I was certainly very eager to see who would be nominated just because it's the first time this category is being contested. And I can read the nominees: Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, Call Her Daddy, Good Hang with Amy Poehler, The Mel Robbins Podcast, Smartless, and Up First from NPR. So it's an interesting crop of nominees here. Sirius
How'd
XM
that news
has...
get in there? What are you doing? Break.
It is a kind of a surprising one to round out the category, especially since the Globes voters clearly snubbed all other kind of political news podcasts, which, as we know, dominates a lot of the podcast charts. My takeaways here, Sirius XM has 3 of the nominees, so there's certainly a juggernaut in podcast land. Otherwise, it's kind of what you'd expect. Now, not everyone ultimately submitted, so there were 25 eligible podcasts, and I don't think all of them ultimately threw their hat in the ring. So, they're not competing against everything that's out there, but no huge surprises here for me.
I have a question for you, Natalie. We all know that Ben Shapiro really wanted this award and campaigned hard for it. And then what I thought would happen was exactly what happened, which is that most of these voters do not know who he is, do not care, and voted for celebrities. Do you think any of these nominees care as much about potentially winning as Ben Shapiro would have?
It's a good question. He clearly wanted it and was campaigning in a way that we haven't seen any of these yet really campaign. But, Dax Shepard, Armchair Expert, they put out a statement, being really excited about being nominated. I saw on the Good Hang social channels that they, trumpeted their nomination as well. I think at the end of the day, people like to be recognized for their work, even if there are a lot of questions surrounding this particular category. I'll be curious to see who actually shows up to the show in January, if the winner is ultimately there to accept their prize.
I'm excited for the NPR folks. They deserve to dress up.
Who's the NPR person coming? Yeah.
I hope they get a great seat. Whoever from NPR is on Up First.
It will be interesting to see where they seat the podcasters in comparison to all of the other stars in the room.
I mean, Amy Poehler, I imagine, gets a pretty good spot.
Will Arnett, and you have some big names there. So yeah,
Yeah, they
That's
snubbed
the
Will
end.
Arnett's movie Is This Thing On, but he can get in for the podcast instead.
Yeah,
And Will Arnett
yeah.
and Amy Poehler, exes nominated against each other. So
Oh,
that's
there
the
you
kind of
go.
drama
That's
we like
right.
at the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
Now that we have this Netflix, Warner Brothers, or potentially Paramount, Warner Brothers hostile combination hanging over our heads, I was taking a look at some of these and wondering what happens if by 2027, we have a Netflix / HBO. How dominant would they be in some of these categories? And then just going back to TV drama, they would then have had the other half of the nominees between The Diplomat on Netflix and White Lotus on HBO and The Pit on HBO Max. You know, I feel like HBO and the Netflix, at least at the Emmys, like are always the top two duking it out here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the HBO and Netflix are kind of the dominant prestige TV places. And I think something you guys have talked about, I think in last week's kind of marathon lives and podcasts, is that when you just have fewer places that are willing to buy this kind of thing, when you combine those offerings, it's going to be detrimental to everybody. Like, I assume Ted Sarandos wants to have the bragging rights of having the most nominations because they all seem to want that. But I don't know if it's worth the price of what you lose in terms of the level of competition here.
Do we think this will be a big part of the antitrust argument here, that they'll be too dominant?
The Golden Globes matter too much.
And another thing, by the way, you're ruining my Golden Globes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm so obsessed with this merger is that Warner Brothers is almost certainly going to win Best Picture with one battle after another. It's going to have another huge contender with Sinners, Minecraft movie, Weapons, all that other stuff, and then for its efforts, is going to get rewarded by being sold. Like it feels to me like it's indicative of how awards aren't everything, which can't be true, right? I can't spend this much time talking about something that's not that important. But it shows you that the business concerns about this stuff, as much as I think awards are good for business, there are things that are so much bigger than it. And the award shows might be the ones that lose out in the end.
You think about the trajectory that Mike and Pam have had this year, all those questions about the stability of their jobs at the start of the year to then, in the end, a really impressive, successful year for them. And now the studio might be sold out from under them essentially by the end of this year. It's wild.
I've seen people describing them giving Paul Thomas Anderson however much to make one battle after another is like giving a steak to a dog before it goes to be put down.
I saw that too. Yeah, I was like, that was a choice. Yeah, wow.
No, it's so grim,
dark,
but
okay,
it
sure.
does have this like Brewster's Millions thing, right? Where they're like, all right, Hollywood's falling apart. How are we going to spend this money? Here you go, PTA, go nuts. And the fact that it worked means that maybe there's another way other than selling the studio, but that's above my pay grade.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Katey. I'm sure you'll be back on to talk more Globes, talk more Oscars. There's a lot of awards coming down the line over the next couple of months.
Thanks, guys. You know I'm always ready.
So many developments since we last talked about this on Friday, which was only 5 days ago. We have Paramount's hostile bid, $30 a share in cash, backed in part by Saudi money, as well as Jared Kushner's affinity partners. Sean, I mean, what's your take on where we are today, Wednesday, December 10th?
Yes, we are recording on it's Wednesday afternoon here in New York, to be clear, because things happen, and it depends on when you're listening to this thing. So, they put the offer forward to shareholders. There's kind of a 10-day window, which now we're on, I guess, 8 more days left in that for WBD to respond. That was a big part of the Ellison thing, was that they never got back to Paramount about their offer. So that was a big part of the element. WBD has said they will advise their shareholders on what they think of that offer. They didn't say they would get back to Paramount specifically, just a small note there. Paramount's $30 offer is good until January 8th. They can extend that if they like. So that's kind of a very soft deadline there. So until that, we're kind of waiting around. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of evaluation the past couple of days, Elaine, about is $30 enough? And a lot of sentiment out there that it's not, because again, you have an agreed to deal with Netflix. It's not like it's like you're in a bidding, situation. Like you have to be, that's like above and beyond what's already agreed to. Natalie will go with maybe an NFL example where if you have a penalty, you have to have evidence enough to overturn it. If it's kind of like the gray area, you go with a call on the field, if you will.
This is not an analogy I recognize, Sean. But
I said Natalie on this one.
He was
Come
talking
on.
to me. And Sean, is there any sense of whether the Ellisons could go higher with their bid? I mean, there's already a lot of Middle Eastern money in this deal. Would they need to go out and raise more if they wanted to increase their offer?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, essentially what's afoot here. There's a number $33, $34 a share, in terms of pick your number in terms of what that would need to get to. So yeah, you're talking another, round of billions of dollars here, whether that is more Ellison money or Redbird money or another there's other ways to do that, but you're getting up there. I said $108 billion, including the debt that is in there. So it's about a $78, $79 billion offer for the assets themselves, including the TV networks. So we'll see, but they could also come back and just bid for the studio. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility here, where because what they're saying essentially is that I wrote this in the wake up, poor cable bundle, man. Like, they are valuing Discovery Global at $1 a share, and the rest of the company is the mix. And it's like, if you have any qualms or any kind of hope about the cable bundle in this world, that is where that's what Paramount is putting forward. Other people were putting forward maybe $2 up to $5 a share value on Discovery Global. And that's where this really kind of lies, is how much do you value the cable business? Because that's not in the Netflix offer. But there's no reason WB cannot come back and say, all right, we'll give you $30 a share just for the studio. And that is simply higher than the Netflix bid. So that all things are on the table, Elaine. So we're just kind of waiting to see what Paramount's going to do at this point. I think to answer your, the baseline, where are we at? Because we don't think, or the sentiment seems to be that $30 a share in the current offer won't persuade enough shareholders to, jump ship, if you will.
And on the regulatory front, interesting development having Kushner in the mix now, because assuming that Ellison's hostile takeover is successful, you suddenly have somebody in the presidential family who is a part owner of one of the largest media
haven't talked about it, Elaine. What are you talking about? Donald said they haven't discussed the matter.
And Trump has also said he will be involved in the deal. So day to day, you look at the
Which
quotes.
one do you want to go with there?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the Christmas holidays will be interesting at the Trump house this year. Yeah, exactly. So, you're talking $24 billion. There's more money from Saudi Arabia and the Kushner, and the Middle East, I should say, other countries in the Middle East and the Kushner fund there than there is from the Ellison family in the equity part of the deal. And they've said they have no board seat.
No governance.
No governance. Like, they're just giving you $24 billion of the goodness of their heart to be a part of this deal. It's like, so that's where the red flags, I think, are coming up. I think there's another letter today from some senators raising some flags about this. And, we'll see. It's, I think, illegal about it. Good question. This is all for the government to decide. Anybody in the industry can, have their take on it, but it's a government and a legal matter. They'll have to decide it. But the Netflix deal, bid has none of this part of it, which again was cited as part of or at least rumored to be part of the reason why WBD board chose the Netflix deal, because it didn't have any of this kind of static involved. And a lot of the Ellison's message the past, on Monday in his call with Wall Street was like, it's fully backstopped by Redbird and Oracle and all this stuff, to kind of assure people, but I don't know if that message is landing. And then, Natalie, your point, if they need more money, will they go back for more money from the Middle East, or where will that additional money come from, is a good question. So yeah, that gets a little dicey there, Elaine, on the funding part for sure.
It sounds like we're all just going to head into the holidays in 2026 holding our breath here about what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't. There's this kind of notion of they'll be wrapped up by Christmas. Like, they have a deal in place. Like, they moved last week, which is like head spinning. Like, this thing is like, what? They have a deal set? Like, wow, that was really fast. But will this go on? I went back and I did a comp in the wake up today on Wednesday, just looking back at the Disney Fox deal, and just like kind of which is, I guess, 9 years ago at this point. But, the deal was agreed to, Disney and Fox, in December, and then Comcast came in June with an all-cash offer that threw a wrench in that mix, So until a deal is closed, the door is open here for all comers with a lot, and a lot more money, and there are breakup fees for a reason. It's like, okay, well, then you pay the $2.8 billion to Netflix and you go with somebody new. So that's not out of the window here.
And when you look at the history of hostile takeover attempts in Hollywood, the last few that I can recall were in 2004 when Comcast attempted a hostile takeover of Disney, and then in 1993 when Barry Diller had launched a hostile bid for Paramount after some of Redstone's. Viacom had won the initial bid to acquire Paramount. Neither of those were successful.
Yeah, not a lot of history with that, and a couple of examples in the Redstone, Barry is the most famous one of them all, probably. In corporate America, sure, you see a lot more of this. Tudor, you used to see more of this, but even Comcast deal, for Fox came in, it was I think 65 billion over, 53 billion of Disney's. So it came in a lot bigger. Like I call that hostile, call it whatever you want, but there's something to come into this. Getting shareholders to jump ship on an existing, thing is interesting. But I do I think the value of Discovery Global, it's very odd to say this could come down to the cable business in terms of how this sways, which is kind of an odd statement to make in 2026. But again, 70% of the profitability at Warner Brothers Discovery comes from cable TV. It's not an inconsequential part of the business, so it is important.
And then I want to talk to you guys about the attempts within the industry to oppose and fight this merger. We've seen, Jane Fonda's Committee for the First Amendment speak up. We've seen, obviously, the guilds, from the Writers Guild, SAG-AFTRA, the Directors Guild. They've all taken varying degrees of strong stances, but have all felt compelled to speak up about this. How much do you think industry sentiment matters, Natalie?
I mean, it's nice in theory, but it's not going to stop a deal from going through. Ultimately, it's going to be down to the Justice Department. And, so I imagine if the stock prices of these companies were to suddenly plummet because suddenly there's, new information that's making it clear that these deals aren't good, that could factor in as well. But, it feels like not a lot can be done at this point. I mean, Sean, am I wrong?
No, they have an obligation. They have an offer that's way above their value of the company. Like this isn't, I got the question. I'm sure all three of us get this question. Like, why can't Warner Brothers just exist as it is? And I'm like, because somebody came on with a boatload of money. This is how capitalism works. It's like, the Zaslav does not own Warner Brothers Discovery. The shareholders do. Even John Malone is a large stakeholder, but he's not a majority stakeholder. No one can really have a say like that to block anything. So you have to look at the offers and you take them. And so there's not really, again, unless it's illegal, Natalie, and that's again the antitrust, like that's really the barrier here. But the guild negotiations, could there be a wrench there that they ask for some sort of accommodation there? I don't know. I haven't really wrapped my head around that too much, Elaine, but that could be something that's a wild card at this point for Hollywood, talent, creative talent specifically.
Well, when I talked to Writers Guild West President Michelle Mulroney on Monday about this, she didn't tip her hand about how they're going to bring this to the contract negotiations in early 2026. But you'd be hard-pressed to imagine that this isn't part of the conversation they're having, right? Aside from AI on the tech front, now they're looking at one fewer studio, one fewer buyer, which is probably going to lead to a chilling effect in the coming months as all of this processes, because this is a 12 to 18-month approval process that we're looking at now. And like we talked about last week, look at what happened to Paramount as a buyer over the last year and a half. They were really stagnant, lethargic, weren't really a contender in that space. So I think there's like a real legitimate concern from within the industry of like, hey, we've already had a really tough 5 years. What is this going to do in the near future? And is this all worth it? And speaking of, is this all worth it? Natalie, you mentioned the share prices. I'm looking at Netflix's stock chart right now. It got a little bump on Friday morning after the initial news came out that it had won its bid, but it's steadily declined since then. So what does that say about institutional interest in this merger?
No, the stock price is a legitimate thing. And Natalie, to your point earlier, if it drops enough where like, all right, the sentiment, that's more maybe Wall Street sentiment versus Hollywood sentiment about the deal. And if that number, gets too dumb, like again, if you bid it up too much, like this just is not worth it. These numbers will not work. Again, the thing that hasn't really been discussed yet, I'm going to break it down on the wake up, I think tomorrow, but both of these deals involve over $50 billion of debt. What was the big problem with the WBD deal? It's like the debt. And, and you're taking on, 34 to 30, call it $30+ billion of debt at Warner Brothers Discovery.
Netflix historically has never taken on this much debt before.
Netflix has $5 billion of net debt right now, as of the end of Q3. So this is, and you're right, Elaine, this has never really been a part of their MO. As much as they were kind of losing money for many years in the 2010s, it's like, the debt wasn't a real big.
But then they turned around their free cash flow issue, like in the late 2010s, and they've been smoother sailing than a lot of other streamers since.
Rocketing up since. Yeah, it's never been a part of their history, their narrative history, Elaine. So it's a big change. It's like you're going to have $50 billion of debt. Now, the numbers are interesting because Netflix, if their current rates of increase of revenue and profit keep growing the way they are, even without Warner Brothers, this could be a pretty massive company in, say, 2 years. Because again, this is going to be a 2027, end of 2027 matter at this point. So their ability to pay off that debt, I'm like, yeah, pretty good. But at Paramount is in a much more precarious position. They don't have that debt, status. They have, the Oracle money, the Ellison money. But as a company, there's a lot of debt there already, and this is going to add, so much more on. And if this bid has to go up even higher, that probably means even more debt that's going to be coming on. And, these companies are, streaming is great, but it's not like it's, AI kind of in terms of the comps of revenue throw-offs or valuations. So that's going to be an interesting topic that's not really been discussed yet about just the debt that these companies are taking on to do this deal. Is it worth it to add these, with the advent of, AI and tech and things, of a lot of looming questions out there? You're buying these assets in a future that's uncertain to be clear. But the cost savings, we should, again, mention, $6 billion of cost savings at Paramount. I mean, for the town and the Elaine and the executive
cost
class,
savings, i.e. layoffs, spending pullbacks, AI integrations, and AI has been surprisingly absent from all of these. They've been doing investor calls at Wall Street and all this stuff. I'd be hard pressed to think if I've even heard that once, maybe, once or twice in these calls. For the first time this year, AI is on the back burner of any of this
AI
news
who?
cycle.
What? No, I don't know what you're talking about, good sir. And then Netflix has also promised, $2 to $3 billion of cost savings. And again, and back to will they squeeze the market if you are combining HBO and Netflix as a buyer, or Paramount and Warner Brothers as TV and Paramount Plus as a buyer? You're going to get better rates. You're going to get, you have with scale, you can squeeze talent, squeeze deals, squeeze margins of profitability if you're a producer.
I'm more curious about where
things.
Netflix's synergies are going to come from versus Paramount, because it sounds like Paramount is largely going to be headcount, right? When you think about all of the corporate redundancies that exist between Paramount and Warner Brothers, but with Netflix,
legal, HR, everything.
Yeah, there's not as much. So it's like, is this just about depressing, prices that you're paying for content in addition to some of the headcount redundancies? Like, where is that going to come from?
Our colleague Leslie Goldberg has a story up about, executives in town and how they're feeling about this. And one of the things that's been pointed out to her is the way that Netflix could start to get accused of self-dealing. They will own a studio and a streamer. And there's certainly a way to bring costs down in terms of how much they're paying for projects already. We've seen that they've, the premium that they've been paying for shows has gone down over time. Could it go down even more if they, can buy directly from their own Warner Brothers studio?
Yeah.
Yeah, the question was, will they pay residuals now? That was the buyout, all that stuff. It's, again, businesses that they're not in. Again, they could. I mean, again, this is an evolution of Netflix. This is not we are becoming a bigger Netflix. It's like, no, you're becoming a bigger company with more diversified revenue streams. I mean, it's just default. I don't think you can really force all this stuff into the way you do business. I'm like, it's just not the WBD is too, or Warner Brothers is too big. But back to the cost cuts, they were asked directly about that, Elaine, by Wall Street, and this is Netflix, and their direct answer was SG&A, which, as anybody knows, is basically salary, headcount, marketing spend, and essentially real estate.
Oh, so same old, all the corporate classics then.
Kind of playing the hits here a little bit, to a degree. But he wasn't, and kind of combining tech stacks, which is, and that's some of that too. But that was really it. So it's that. But Netflix does have a little bit less of that because they don't have a TV division that produces outside, for third parties. So if they're going to do that, you need those business affairs people who have those deal experiences and those executives. So there's probably a little less of that going on at Netflix, but it ain't zero. And there's a lot of other, and back to and that's also marketing spend, right? Those big $80 million WB movie marketing spends. Well, that they're in theaters, but are they being supported to the degree that they're supported now at Warner Brothers, which is what makes these films cultural phenomenons and hits. So that's another thing to keep your eye on is marketing spend. Netflix does spend a lot of marketing money, but they do not spend anywhere near the amount of money, especially in the movie division, to launch the films that they make. So that's something else to keep an eye on, Elaine.
Yeah.
So obviously these cost savings have people really worried. But Elaine, you mentioned earlier the kind of freeze that could settle over these companies as we wait for these deals. I mean, regardless of a hostile takeover, a Netflix deal to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery could take 12 to 18 months, I think they've said. I have a lot of questions about how much deal making will go on at either of these two companies while they're trying to wrap up this deal.
Yeah, it's twofold, right? Because it's not just Paramount and Skydance, which were, very different entities than when you're looking at a Netflix and a Warner Brothers. Obviously Netflix produces a lot in-house. Warner Brothers, I think the question is going to be, how much of it is going to be business as usual while they go through this 12 to 18 month process, especially if the future of HBO Max is hanging in the balance, right? Like how much are you going to want to make for that streamer? I mean, even right now, I think the only two English language scripted shows they have on HBO Max are Hacks and The Pit, although they are in the works in a program to make procedurals great again. They've got medical stuff, they've got legal stuff going on, all templated from The Pit, because these are sort of low-cost, hour-long dramas that have been working really well, using The Pit as a template. But I do think there's a legitimate question as to what happens at both of these companies, and the impact of a chill at both Netflix studios and Warner Brothers TV would be seismic. I want to bring this back around before we end to the public sentiment part of this. Again, I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel like we've ever seen such a public backlash, both from the American consumer and from people inside Hollywood to a proposed merger. And I think part of that is, Netflix is the dominant streamer and WB-TV is one of the dominant producers of TV. And so you're creating this enormous behemoth, which, really only has a competitor in Disney. I think that's the most well-rounded heavyweight that you have there. Whereas if you had a Paramount Warner Brothers combination, I don't feel like people were reacting as strongly to that, because the thought was, well, at least you're creating a larger competitor to Netflix.
I did think it was pretty notable that Netflix sent out an email to all of its subscribers sharing information of this deal.
Nothing is changing for now.
Exactly. Putting forward its argument for why this would be great for them. I have not been on the receiving end of an email like that from any company going through a major M&A transaction before. It certainly tells me that they want to get ahead of how their subscribers could potentially feel about a deal like this.
Yeah, but Elaine, it's hard to find anybody who's excited about this deal outside of any of the leaders of Paramount or Netflix or Warner Brothers, for that matter. So does that matter in the end? Will that change the price of bread? I don't know, but enthusiasm does go a long way. This isn't again the pharmaceutical business or the insurance business. Like, this does actually matter more in this industry. So. And it's a wild card. Could it hit a point of momentum where it just becomes too loud? Yeah, you could see that. I don't want to downplay that, Elaine. This is a financial transaction, but it isn't a very creative business. So that is something that, if you are not happy about it, you should be talking about it. The leadership is listening to this, and sentiment matters very, very much. Perception matters a lot. But someone said to me this week, it's a political campaign, and they're making pitches, and this is what this is all about. It's not about specifics. It's about feeling and sentiment at this point. And who can win public favor in the weeks and months ahead will be interesting to watch for sure.
All right. Well, make sure you all stay tuned to Netflix, Bros, Para, Warner's vibe check over here in the weeks and months to come.
You just try to mash up all three companies into one there, Elaine? Was that what that attempt was?
A little bit. This is why I don't work in marketing, Sean.
Elaine Low, branding expert. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Either way, watch this space. All right, Rushfield's Rant will be back next week. Richard is off this week, but he'll be back next week with all of your favorite hot takes. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. If you have any feedback for us, anything you feel like we haven't been covering, make sure you email us at podcast@theankler.com. I'm at elaine@theankler.com. And don't forget to fill out our Google Form survey on your predictions for Hollywood. What's hot? What's not for next year? What phrase would you never like to see uttered again in this town? Make sure you tell us and fill that out. There's a link in the notes of our pod, and as well as this YouTube video. All right. Thanks so much to Sean McNulty, Natalie Jarvey, and Katey Rich. I'm Elaine Low. We'll see you next week.